I've been fighting with one arm tied behind my back. But what happens when I'm finally set free?
Welcome to Marveling.
A deep dive into the Marvel Cinematic Universe in podcast form.
I'm Tyler.
And I'm Tyler.
What? Are you a Skrull?
Maybe.
You're Courtney.
I'm Courtney.
Hi.
Hi. Welcome to our Captain Marvel episode. Captain Marvel, the newest Avenger.
Second Avenger.
The newest Avenger.
She kind of is the second Avenger.
Technically, yeah. She's the reason that the Avenger Initiative is created. So
the Protector Initiative.
That was real bad.
Yeah.
So this is our 90s movie in our chronological deep dive.
Yeah. If you couldn't tell by the soundtrack and the
sweet grunt rock, bro.
All the product placement.
Yeah. So before we get into Captain Marvel herself, though, we've got some other things to talk about. Some exciting new announcements in the Avengers world. Mostly the announcement that Avengers Endgame is getting a re-release.
Ooh.
Because they so want to topple Avatar, it's not even funny.
Yeah, no, they need that 40, I think it's like 45 million or something.
Like that.
Yeah.
Which, honestly, the silliest thing is, both of these properties are owned by Disney,
yes.
So either way, Disney wins.
Yes.
But I do want to see it topple
Avengers
Avatar.
is my franchise. I don't care about Avatar. So
who does?
Yeah, I don't think anyone does.
But so it's being re-released. Kevin Feige said that it's being re-released with a deleted scene and some post-credit goodies and some kind of tribute. Tribute, I'm assuming, maybe to Stan Lee.
Yeah.
Maybe to not Tony, RDJ and the originals.
Yeah,
probably
I don't know.
I would assume it would be a Stan Lee tribute.
I think, that would get the waterworks going.
Oh my god. But they said that it's not going to be anything added to the movie. It's all going to be after the movie.
It's at the end. Which all the people complaining that there wasn't a post-credit scene at the end of Endgame because it's a tradition and they can shut up now. Do
you think it's going to be like... It's not going to be teased for a new movie. It's going to be...
I don't know. Maybe it is. He has said, Kevin Feige, our Lord and Savior, has said that...
All praise, Kevin.
He has said that Black Widow, whether it's a prequel or not, is similar to, I think, to First Avenger, is going to be setting some things up and revealing some things that maybe we didn't know were there all along, or what. I don't know what that is, but I think Black Widow is in production. There's maybe a 22% chance.
Yeah.
This is the 22nd Marvel movie, so there's a 22% chance that they show a snippet of Black Widow.
That makes sense. I hope the deleted scene is like Steve taking the stones across the universe.
That's what I want. I want to see him confronting Red Skull. I don't think that's what it is going to be, because that is, and I mean, I could be wrong, but I think that that's something that if they shot that, they would have included that somehow.
Yeah,
I think.
and there's a bit of like speculation that maybe they didn't include it because they don't necessarily want to fully close the book on Cap's.
I think Chris Evans wants to close the book on Cap.
I don't think Chris Evans... I think if you give Chris Evans a little bit to fly away and then he'll like come back maybe. I don't know. But I think it would be cool to see that.
Yeah.
But if it's just like a deleted scene of him like going home to his life with Peggy, like I don't need that. But I also wonder what else it could be.
Well, and it could be an extended scene of something. I mean, they run the risk of it being something superfluous that is just fluff and filler,
right? And
then everyone being annoyed that
they paid more money to see this.
And I think I've seen a little bit people griping online and complaining that this is obviously just a ploy to topple Avatar, and like obviously it is.
Obviously,
no one's making you go see it. I think they're trying to entice you, which I as soon as I read that, I was like, going.
Yeah, I'm down to see it.
I'm looking for an excuse to see it again, obviously, and it's coming out on Blu-ray and digital soon, but. This is, I think, is a valid reason to go out and see it.
And especially if it helps get that Avatar.
I'm happy with them toppling that.
And people totally are like, it's not fair. And it's like, well, Avatar is only that top because it was re-released.
Yeah, it was re-released a couple times and it came out in January. There was nothing else or
So-
December or whatever came out, but it had a long run in the downtime of it wasn't during the summer like Endgame was.
Right.
So
Yeah, and I honestly, if they re-release it in IMAX, I'll be like really pumped. I wanted to see Endgame one more time in IMAX, and by the time that I could,
how many times did you see Endgame?
Why are you calling me out like this? I've seen it 5 times.
Okay.
3 times were in IMAX. Wanted to see it one more time, but I don't know if they'll have access to IMAX theaters because there's a lot of other stuff coming out.
Yeah.
in IMAX,
Well, I
Toy
think
Story,
this, if you look
etc.
at sort of the slate of things coming out, this is like kind of the only weekend that
Yeah.
Disney doesn't have something going on.
I wonder too if they're
Or
going to
just
keep it
big
like
movie coming
a
out.
limited thing. If it's only going to come out for a week and then they're going to fully pull it or something.
Well, I
which-
think it's still in theaters right now.
it is.
To see. So
But
I
if
don't know.
if
I think they're going to try to bill it as sort of a special engagement, I would think.
If they pump it out for like just 1 week, I think that the drive like for people to go see
Sure.
it will definitely get them that 40 million to defeat the behemoth
Yes.
that is Avatar.
Let's do it.
But yeah, I'm excited for it. I don't care. I'll throw more money at it. I've already pre-ordered my 4K DVD. Just give me this stuff. And the other exciting kind of bit of news is that Kevin Feige confirmed that he's talking to Keanu Reeves about some kind of entrance to the MCU, which I think I love Keanu. I think that'd be so dope.
Yeah. No, I think they've said, or they haven't said specifically, but I could see him in the Eternals, or I think you were saying that maybe Silver Surfer,
seems to be
which
all
blew
over
my
the
mind.
place.
That would be kind of crazy, but
Yeah, everybody is like so on board for him to be Silver Surfer.
I think he would have that sort of kind of surfer aloofness that.
Oh yeah. Have you seen Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure?
Well, at even Point Break, he's
That's
like,
true.
I mean, he's an agent or whatever, but
Yeah.
he's playing that surfer dude. So I think that would definitely be interesting.
Yeah. And also, because San Diego Comic-Con is happening in about a week, we wanted to maybe give a little bit of speculation station, as Tyler called it, about... Where did that come from?
That's the speculation station train pulling into the station.
I don't know where you just pulled that out of, but oh my god.
Yes, we're here in the station, and we're going to talk about maybe what we hope to see. I know there's been some leaks.
I'm still not over that.
Yeah, I ordered that on Amazon 2 days ago. So
Okay, thank you so much for being the co-host I've always wanted.
yeah, so there. Sorry. That's what I was hoping that was going to happen. It would derail this whole podcast.
It did. So San Diego Comic-Con has typically been like big for Marvel. Like everybody thinks that they're going to pull out of San Diego Comic-Con. They're not going to be a big part of it. And they did pull out for a year, but it's because last year they really couldn't have shown anything because
Well, and I think they didn't want to
Comic-Con-
show. They
Well,
wanted to keep it a little closer to the vest.
Last
I
year,
would think.
San Diego Comic-Con was after Infinity War, so literally, what could they show? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, we just killed all our characters, so.
Yeah, well,
See
they
you
wanted to
later.
leave. They wanted to leave the audience with that
Right.
bad taste in their mouth. So.
But Brie Larson was announced at San Diego Comic-Con as Captain Marvel. They've announced some of the phases at San Diego Comic-Con.
Josh Brolin too as
Josh
Thanos.
Brolin. So San Diego Comic-Con is just historically been somewhere that they've definitely revealed some stuff, and I think that there's Phase 4 is what's coming up next,
Yeah,
and I
well,
don't think they'll squander this opportunity.
Yeah, no, and I think that he's definitely hinted that they're going to have a major presence at San Diego Comic-Con, and kind of looking at some of the theories and things out there that people are speculating will be announced. I went back and looked at the Phase 3 reveal a little bit, where they announced all the movies that were coming out, or that have come out now, but in 2014 at San Diego Comic-Con.
Is that the reveal where they gave Captain America one name and then at the very end they
Yeah.
were like, oh no, wait, it's Civil War.
Well, and I remember that where I was watching it in real time as they were announcing all the movies, and they started with Captain America 3, and the subtitle came on and it said Serpent Society.
Oh, that's right.
Which they're sort of like sea-level Captain America villains, and they all dress like lizards, and it's very weird. Winter Soldier had just come out, or was just about to come out, so it sort of did kind of fit the espionage like vibe or whatever that Winter Soldier had, but it definitely seemed like a weird swerve,
Right.
and they were trying to, I don't know, it just seemed weird. But that was sort of the beginning of Phase 3 was Captain America 3, then Doctor Strange, Guardians 2, which Guardians 1 hadn't even come out yet, but they were all, they knew what they had
Right.
that Guardians was going to be this big deal. So they had already greenlit Guardians 2 and put that on the schedule. Thor Ragnarok, Black Panther, Infinity War Part 1, Captain Marvel, Inhumans, and Infinity War Part 2.
So Inhumans is the only thing that didn't come out.
Yeah, and that there's a whole thing with the TV side and the movie side. They were closer linked in the beginning, Phase 1 and Phase 2. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was coming out after Avengers during Phase 2, and there was more of a direct link. They started to introduce Inhumans in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in Season 3, and by that point, the TV side and the movie side kind of broke ties.
Okay.
And Ike Perlmutter, who is sort of the head of Marvel, was trying to exert his control over Marvel Studios too, and Kevin Feige kind of said, listen, Avengers, billion-dollar property, Iron Man, billion-dollar property, all of these other movies we have coming out, they're going to make you a lot of money.
Right.
I need all the control, basically. So Disney kind of said they had just bought Marvel, and we're starting to see some of the returns from Avengers and all of that, and said that basically, Ike, you can play with the TV world, and you got your little comic books, and Kevin, you are in charge of the movies.
Right.
So Inhumans was, at the time, was still sort of in that, I think, nebulous area where they were trying to set it up, and it was gonna be their stand-ins for the mutants, because they didn't have X-Men still at that time.
Yep.
And they were going to use that to sort of give a lot of different people power similar to mutants. I think obviously the show ended up coming out, and that was...
It didn't do
I didn't
very
even
well.
see it. I watched the trailer and was like, no thank you.
Everything that I heard about it was like pretty bad, so I didn't even try and give it a watch.
Yeah, no. So I think but looking at the rest of the movies, they definitely have a really good track record. All of those movies came out. Some of the release dates got pushed around a little bit, but that was only because they added some movies. They added Spider-Man, they added Ant-Man and the Wasp, because those movies that were Ant-Man hadn't come out yet, and Civil War, which at the end of this sort of slate reveal, Kevin Feige came back out, or stopped at the end and said, oh wait, I think, and kind of hammed it up a little bit, and they brought the graphic back up, and Serpent Society changed to Civil War.
And they had Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr. come out
that's right.
during that, which was amazing.
Yeah. So, and I think that was a cool way to sort of have their cake and eat it too, where Civil War, they didn't want to start the announcement with Civil War, because that was sort of the biggest...
overshadow everything.
Yeah. So they kind of were able to start and end that announcement with that. So.
But there's a solid amount of like stuff on the docket that they could talk about at San Diego Comic-Con. Like you said, that Black Widow is already in production.
Mm-hmm.
Black Panther 2, Guardians of the Galaxy 3, Doctor Strange 2 have all been like confirmed for a while now, like even before Infinity War. So I think that they might like break down some timing, at least when these things will start to show up.
Sure. Yeah, they've announced, I think, 8 dates from 2020 to 2022 where they have locked in those dates. And I think they're going to... the placeholders, they'll announce basically what those movies are and when they're coming out.
And there's been rumors of The Eternals as a movie, Shang-Chi as a movie, a potential for Thor 4, Ant-Man 3 if that happens, Captain Marvel 2. And it seems, keep seeing around the internet stuff about New Avengers, Young Avengers, and Dark Avengers, which who knows if they'll be their own movies, but it could be the sort of thing that they start exploring.
Sure. They've already started to establish Young Avengers with Cassie Lang and sort of the hints to whether it's Hawkeye's daughter or Hawkeye training someone else that they've alluded to. That I think that's definitely going to happen at some point. And whether Spider-Man's involved with that or not, I think that could be interesting. But New Avengers and Dark Avengers definitely seemed like an interesting, especially knowing kind of where the comics go. New Avengers was a way to have an Avengers team that also included some of their bigger characters that were never, or famously never, with the Avengers.
Yep.
And then Dark Avengers is sort of the bad boy Avengers, where you had Norman Osborn leading a team of Avengers, which I know we'll see what happens with Far From Home, but I think there's a chance that he could be introduced, and there's been some rumblings about that.
Yep. It'll be interesting. I think we're going to see Black Widow next year in 2020.
Yeah.
They at least have 2 movies on the docket for 2020. And it'll be interesting to see what the other movie might be. But
Sure.
Black Widow is the only thing in production right
that's
now.
only active in production. I think Eternals is the only other one that has active casting.
Yeah.
So that would be my guess for the other movie in 2020.
Yep.
And I'm kind of surprised, and maybe I shouldn't be, but that they haven't kind of fast-tracked Black Panther 2, because that movie was massive.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll get... I think that we'll get some announcement on that. But
Yeah, I don't think it's supposed to start filming until next year.
Yeah,
Which also makes sense, because if you think about it, Chadwick Boseman went from Civil War to like Black Panther to Infinity War to like the dude has been flat
Sure.
out for a long
Yeah.
time. So I don't blame him for wanting to take a bit of a break either.
And I'm happy for them to take more time if that means that it's going to be a better movie.
Right,
too.
I agree. But yeah, so San Diego Comic-Con could definitely be like, I don't think we're going to see anything about the shows.
Yeah,
They're going to save that for D23.
They've already said that they're going to do some Disney Plus announcements at D23, I believe.
They have a whole like Marvel day.
Okay, yeah.
I think like Saturday morning is like all Marvel. So I definitely think we're going to see a bunch at D23, but I don't. People keep saying, hey, there's no way they're going to go to San Diego Comic-Con, and I think that's bullshit. Like,
yeah, no, I think at this point he's announced that they're there, so
Yeah.
they're going to have a major presence.
Yeah, it's such a good like atmosphere for them to build hype. Like, there's just no way, and especially if like they do a cool thing like the Cyberpunk game and brought Keanu out on stage. Like, get Keanu signed up for something quick and bring him to San Diego Comic-Con. People go ballistic.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and I would like to see James Gunn on stage now and talk more about Guardians 3.
Yep.
I mean, just because and I know he's busy with Suicide Squad, or the Suicide Squad, or whatever
which
they're calling it.
I hope he makes that a much better
Yeah,
situation.
I mean, I think he'll do it okay, but I'm still not really holding my breath. But
I don't think you could do any worse.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But I think that would be cool to kind of. They've already made up, obviously, but they could use that as a time to.
That's true.
Reintroduce him back out.
But so I guess we'll see what comes San Diego Comic-Con, and we're planning on having a little reaction bonus episode after that happens.
Yeah.
So look out for that. But yeah, do you want to get into Captain Marvel?
Let's get into it. I thought it would be
figure it
cool to start with a little bit of a background on her history in the comic books.
Okay.
Her character specifically, I noticed in rewatching the movies, the comic book origins stay pretty similar with the other Avengers, Cap and Iron Man and Hulk and all that. They do some new things, and they make it fit obviously better in our time or whatever. But her origin and her kind of presence in the comic book world for 40 years or 50 years really was. I thought really different than how they portrayed her on screen.
This is another Avenger that I went into knowing nothing about her.
Yeah.
So
She starts out in 1968 when the original Captain Marvel is introduced, and he's a Kree, similar to Yon-Rogg, is a Kree soldier.
Okay.
He's sent to Earth to kind of spy on Earth and see what's going on. At this point in sort of the history of Marvel, the Marvel Universe has been around for 6 or 7 years.
Okay.
So Fantastic Four, Avengers, Spider-Man, X-Men, they're kind of all living in the world. And 1968 is when they start to introduce a lot more characters like Captain Marvel, Silver Surfer. And so he's sent to Earth to spy on us, I guess. While he's on Earth, it's a whole story of him finding his humanity.
Okay.
Kind of similar to Carol's arc, but he's a full Kree, so he's completely alien. Carol is actually introduced in that series as sort of a side character. She is a military officer. She works at the Air Force, and she's like the security chief or whatever. And she ends up getting caught in an explosion with Marvel, who is the Lawson character in an Benning character, but he's a male. It's called Marvel and she gets knocked out in a coma.
Okay.
That's in 1968, I believe. And then she's not seen again for 10 years. So, and her appearance in that comic, she's in a couple issues, I think, and she's just very much a supporting character. She shows up again at the end of the 70s, and has superpowers that she gained from that explosion. So again, very similar, but she is still kind of an earthbound hero. She's not doing any intergalactic stuff or whatever. And it's revealed then that her genetic structure is melded with Captain Marvel. So she ends up being that hybrid, Kree hybrid character. She ends up joining the Avengers and going on some adventures with them. Avengers issue number 200, which is a big issue. She's actually kidnapped by a cosmic being known as Marcus. It's a very cosmic name. And she's taken to an alternate dimension where after he brainwashes her, impregnates her, and he essentially rapes her and impregnates her, and then comes back to Earth and gives birth to this child. It like rapidly ages, gives birth to the child, and it's revealed that the child is Marcus. Somehow ages into Marcus rapidly, and the Avengers see her and they interact with her, and all this is happening. She's still under his mind control, and they just assume that she's in love with Marcus, who she just gave birth to, and this whole weird thing. So
there's some shit that was in the comics that I am not upset that is not in these movies.
So she and the Avengers let her leave with Marcus. They go back to the alternate dimension or whatever, and they're like, bye, like, great seeing you. And she ends up being taken away essentially with her captor. And she ends up then coming back to Earth a couple years later. The X-Men writer at the time, Chris Claremont, sort of corrects some of the wrong that the Avengers writers did to Carol, and says basically she lands on Earth and ends up getting her power stolen by Rogue, who's an X-Men. That's a whole thing. She's evil at the time. But Professor X, who's the leader of the X-Men, who has psychic powers, ends up kind of figuring out what happened to Carol, confronts the Avengers and says, you done fucked up, and basically lays it all out for them to say, this is not, you screwed up. So Carol ends up saying her goodbyes to the Avengers at that point and joins the X-Men. This is in the 80s now. And she goes on some adventures with them, ends up getting more cosmic powers, and becomes another character called Binary. And before that, obviously, she was known as Miss Marvel, which all kinds of other stuff happens, blah, 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 blah. But she ends up taking on the mantle of Captain Marvel in 2012, sort of to honor the original Captain Marvel from that gave her powers, essentially.
Okay.
He had died in the 80s, and so she wanted to... Captain America actually is the one who suggests that she take on his mantle and sort of reclaim that, which the movie does, I think, an interesting job of sort of connecting some of the dots, but they take it in a very different place, I think. And
which doesn't seem like it's a bad thing.
Yes.
Like, some of that is insane.
Yeah.
But they definitely made this like a much more modern story, like origin story, which they've done with a lot of the other.
Well, and I think the MCU does a good job of sort of streamlining the characters and making them a little bit more easier to swallow, because that would be a lot. That's like 40 movies that you just like popped out there. Like, well, and I just thought it was kind of interesting, especially now where we're in this like feminist time, and Captain Marvel is sort of this big female empowerment character, to kind of see where the character came from and some of the missteps that were taken.
Which I think is like, it's hugely indicative of the comic book kind of culture as a whole, which as a woman, it was kind of hard to get into comic books when I was younger, just because it was very like, it was not super accessible for me. There weren't heroes for me to an extent. It was a very male predominant, like Batman, Superman, like Wonder Woman was kind of there, but like most of the time she was a lot weaker. Like,
well, and a lot of the female characters had skimpy outfits, and they were more there to be the.
And I think that's also why I ended up liking X-Men so much, because there were several like really strong female characters. There was Storm, there was Phoenix, there was like Rogue, and they were really cool and they were really badass. And it was hard, especially Marvel didn't feel like, I don't think I could have named a female Marvel other than Black Widow, like early on. So it's interesting to see, and I appreciate in a way that they are modernizing this. And just to like get into our next couple points, this makes it really interesting to think about the backlash that this movie got.
Yeah.
Which before I saw this movie, I had like no high hopes for it because everything I saw on the internet was absolutely shitting on it. They thought it was like a feminist like propaganda film. Like they hated like that she needed to be in this universe. Like, and it was a lot of like the Asian markets hated this movie because they didn't think that she showed enough skin, like, which is insane, like in this day and age. And especially after this came out, after Wonder Woman came out, which was also a super empowering female movie. And granted, Wonder Woman is in much skimpier attire.
You see a little bit more skin.
You see a lot more of Diana, but Diana, it makes sense. Captain Marvel, like this makes sense. She's in a flight suit. She's an Air Force pilot. Like,
and she's in space, flying around. And she's not gonna.
She's not there to be eye candy. She's there to be a freaking badass, and I think that she does that very well. But the backlash of this movie was, I almost didn't go see it because I was like, really, like they did this badly. And then I went and saw it, and I was very glad that I did because even just as a female, I enjoyed her, and I enjoyed like a lot of her struggles that she has in the 90s are like, yeah, absolutely. That's what I grew up with and what still kind of is around today, but less so.
Well, and there are similar themes of her being like subjugated in the movie. She's tricked into believing something from the Kree and is sort of under their spell, essentially.
Right. No, and I was just stunned by the amount. And I wonder, Black Widow doesn't seem like it's going to get the same backlash. Is that because Scarlett Johansson has been willing to like unzip her hat suit for a while?
Well,
like,
and she's more of a known quantity. I mean, she's been in the movie since Iron Man 2. And
I feel like they've been clamoring for her to have a solo movie for a long time.
Yeah.
And is it just because of the sex appeal, or I mean, most of it is. I get it. I get it too, but it's also it's a little.
Well, it is a little too bad that it took. This is the 21st movie and that's the first one that has a female as the lead.
Yeah. But Marvel at least has done a very good job with keeping very strong female characters, even if they're background characters. Like Pepper Potts is very strong. Black Widow is amazing. All of the females from Black Panther are so amazing.
Valkyrie.
The Dora Milaje, Valkyrie. Like there are incredible female characters across the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Gamora. So I've never felt like a shortage of like females to look up to, but like a female-led movie suddenly made everyone lose their minds, which is really funny to me. Maybe in part that's why this has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 78, but it only has an audience score of 55.
That was a little divisive, I think.
Yeah. Metacritic, it's at a 64, and IMDb, it's at a 7. So it's pretty much like, it's a very well, I think, received movie mostly. And the more and more people I talk to after the fact are like, they love Captain Marvel and they love her in Endgame sort of thing. So I think people have come around, but compared to the last movie we talked about, compared to Captain America, the First Avenger, which came in like, there was a very low grossing movie overall. This movie, which I'm sure it also got a bump too when Endgame came out. This movie ended up grossing $1.128 billion.
Yeah,
This did very well.
Big bucks.
So it's not like this was a total pan like across the board just because it was a female, but it definitely. Well,
and I think with anything online, it's always the vocal minority that's the one complaining about everything. Whether it's Star Wars and the Last Jedi or this movie, I think the percentage of people that actually have an issue with this movie is very
the loudest,
small.
Yeah. I mean, they're such a small minority.
Yeah.
But what do you think about this movie?
I like this movie. I don't love it. I think I like her, and I like a lot of the sort of the changes to her backstory and sort of the way that they present some of the things, her regaining her memories and stuff, I think are interesting. Just from an origin standpoint, it's not as kind of cookie cutter, but I think overall the movie has some kind of pacing issues, and some of the characters are like the Skrulls, for instance. Talos is this like badass for a lot of the movie, or the first half of the movie, and then the second half when you kind of figure out what he's all about.
His motive.
Yeah, and it just, I think they wanted him to be both ways, where they had him as sort of the maniacal, cackling villain, and then, oh, but wait, he's really just kind of like a bumbling fool and like doesn't know about science and cats, and but like some of those jokes and stuff kind of fell flat for me. And then I like making them the sympathetic character, and it definitely in our sort of xenophobic time that we're living in, it is sort of an interesting way to sort of flip the script and say, like, different people that look different than you aren't bad.
Right.
I think that's a valid message, and that is something that's worth sort of presenting to the masses. But just some of the choices like that.
I agree with you about pacing issues. I definitely think this movie struggles a lot with some scenes are like really slow and super boring, and then some scenes I'm wondering what the hell is going on, because it all just seems to come at you like really, really quickly.
Well, and especially the beginning is, and I think they want you to feel kind of disjointed and not really know where you are, because that's sort of how Carol's supposed to be feeling.
A reason why this feels rushed maybe is it seems, well, it isn't seems, I know that they were trying to get this out before Endgame came out, because they really wanted to introduce Captain Marvel, because we all thought that she was going to have a much, much bigger impact on Endgame. And after seeing Endgame and seeing how small her role was in Endgame, I don't think she needed this movie beforehand. I think they could have spent a little bit more time with this, made it a little bit... It could have gotten the Black Panther treatment. Like, Black Panther was introduced in Civil War and just showed up, and it was still great. I loved him all the same, and then his movie came out, and I loved him even more.
Sure.
And I don't think there was any disservice for that.
I think they wanted to weave her into the fabric of the Marvel Universe more than just setting her up and then...
Right.
They wanted her to kind of have been there the whole time and be Nick Fury's motivation, and just sort of...
I just don't feel like we were missing these loose ends that it tied up for Endgame.
Yeah.
I feel like we could have seen Endgame and then tied up these loose ends as like a neat secondary
that's
bow.
where watching it sort of removed from Endgame, whereas now we're watching it chronologically and seeing it sort of where it sits in the timeline of the MCU. I enjoyed it a little bit more, actually, because I wasn't looking at it to sort of connect the dots from Infinity War to Endgame.
Right.
And I was just able to enjoy it kind of more for what it was.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about this too is it was filmed after Endgame. Like, Brie went in and filmed her scenes in Endgame, literally having no clue who Captain Marvel was, what she was going to be like. Like, she just kind of winged it. Yeah,
they filmed Endgame back to back with Infinity War. They filmed it as one thing. So she was doing her costume tests and all that in the middle of them filming Infinity War.
Which is why Endgame and this, her colors are flipped. Did you notice that?
I think, didn't they change? They did.
In Endgame, all of the blues that she has on here are reds. Like, her color scheme is just flipped. It's a weird
I think they did that digitally too, because they wanted her to have like an updated suit or whatever, because it was 20 years later.
Yeah.
It's definitely... They've been working on this a long time, but I think they were trying to get it slotted in to get out there quicker. Because she had been in the conversation, at least, since Age of Ultron.
Right.
And had originally was going to be introduced when the Avengers team is announced at the end of that movie. Yep. When Falcon and Scarlet Witch and Vision and War Machine come out into the training room or whatever.
Yep.
That she was going to come down, and that would have been even weirder, I think, if they did that, because you would have had no idea who she was or what she was about or why she was there or how she knew anyone. So I think they could have done a worse job, I guess.
No, it's in the scheme of like Marvel movies, it's not my favorite Marvel movie. I ended up absolutely loving Carol. Like, I love her as a character.
Yeah.
And I found myself through Endgame, like during the final battle, like I was whispering to myself, like, where is Carol? We need Carol. Like, where is she? And just wanting her to come back.
Well, and then I think she's used sparingly in Endgame because they want to focus on the main six.
Right.
But she does definitely get some badass moments when the ship gets blown up and you're like, the guns all raise up to point at the ship and you see it getting blown up. That is...
I just got chills.
I know. And similar to Doctor Strange, I like seeing her interacting with the other characters in the Marvel Universe. That scene in the beginning of Endgame is one of my favorite scenes of the movie, and just seeing her interacting and kind of no one knows kind of what she's about, but then she kind of shows her mettle to Thor when Thor stands up and is in her face and she doesn't back down.
Right.
That proves to them that she is this strong woman.
The fact that this was the first movie that came out post Stan Lee's passing and just the tribute that they gave to him in the intro, I cried.
Yeah, I was tearing up at the very beginning before the movie had even started watching that.
It was a very beautiful little like tribute to him.
Yeah.
I loved the way that they did it. Basically, we're like kind of just very much thrust into whatever Carol's life is right now. We're given like a shot.
Veers. Her name is Veers.
Sorry, Veers. We're given a shot of like some kind of explosion, some kind of nightmare that she's happening, some past that she doesn't know. But she is living on Hala and is a part of this Star Force thing with creepy Jude Law and his creepy light eyes.
I don't like it.
And it's kind of like it's a very rushed intro to her because they're trying to like a majority of this movie takes place on Earth.
Yeah.
And they're trying to get her back to Earth as quickly as they can.
Yeah. But they want to set up the world of the Kree a little bit too. And
which one of the things that I noticed in speaking about Jude Law's creepy eyes is all of these Kree seem to have creepy, very light eyes, and Carol 100% doesn't. Carol has super brown eyes, and I wonder if that she ever like questioned that. Like,
well, she does have the blue blood. If you notice,
she
she like because of the infusion or whatever,
right? And they've infused her memory to make her remember bleeding blue in the crash. Yeah, even though she didn't.
Seeing the Skrull approaching her and all of
that. I also love in the beginning part of this movie that we get to see Korath again. Jimon Houson, I think.
Jaimon
Hansu. Thank you. I'll never get it right. Which I immediately was like, that guy's from like Guardians. Like I love the very solid weaving that they're still doing with these characters across.
Ronan is in this a little bit, and I think you can kind of see he's not as crazy as he comes to be in Guardians. So it's sort of a nice introduction of him. Obviously, he's not in it very much, but you get to kind of see maybe where he started a little bit.
Right. One thing that's always like hit me weird about this movie is I don't know if it comes down to editing. I don't know if it's just these actors spitting lines back and forth at each other. And maybe that's part of why people had such a hard time relating to Carol and feeling Bree as Carol, is that she just seems to like quip back so quickly with like every interaction she has, especially when she's breaking out of the Kree ship and is fighting all these people, and she's like, well, does anyone know how to get these off? No? Well, okay. Like, it's just like, it's too quick.
I think, and she is a funny character in some of her other movies and TV shows that she's been in. I think so. I don't know if it is just the timing of the edit and just kind of rushing things along or what, but I do definitely agree with you.
Not all of these not all of these scenes have pacing issues like that, but there are definitely some that it's just like, dude, like slow down.
And a lot of the quips definitely fall flat, I think.
Yeah. I do love the personality that we see from Carol in that scene when she's like fighting them and like one guy comes up yelling at her and she just yells right back at him. Like,
no, I do. I like that.
I love stuff like that, but it just feels like some of it just feels like too forced.
Yeah, they want to make her that jokey, quippy character.
Right. She kind of gets like they're trying to pull into her memories to try and find this Lawson character that we don't really know yet, and which sends her on the trajectory to Earth.
To back up a little bit though, what did you think of the sort of the Star Force setup, and we're killing Skrulls because they're evil? And
I'm gonna be honest, and I'm gonna say that the first time that I saw this movie, when Talos makes his shift and comes to Carol and Nick Fury and Maria pleading and trying to explain himself, I didn't trust him. Yeah. I literally didn't trust him. It wasn't until they got up to the spaceship that I see his family and I see their reconnection.
No, I didn't either, because in the comic books, that's like they are famously evil, villainous characters.
Yeah, and they did such a nice job, I think. I mean, it was still very rushed, but the way that they set up Star Force, it just seemed natural. Like, yeah sure, I believe this. I believe these people. And they did a good job with, I mean, watching it again now, seeing Jude Law's pauses at some of the things that Carol is saying to him, and like you can tell, like, oh shit, that's because like she's realizing things that he doesn't want her to remember. But the first time seeing this movie, I was like, yeah, like totally. Here they're just wanting to find her and help her. Like,
well, and there's a lot of in his performance, a lot of sort of the subtle toxic masculinity sort of traits that come off. I think where he's saying things and trying to tear her down a little bit or keep her from using her powers and trying to put her in this box.
Yep.
Yeah, so we go from sort of this mission to rescue their spy or whatever, Solar, and she gets taken by the Skrulls. And I like the scene of her where they're probing her memory. The
way that they did that scene was awesome. Like, it was definitely very disjointing and very, like, I felt as confused as Carol was.
Yeah,
like, especially
it was definitely an interesting way to present some of that backstory.
Absolutely.
As opposed to just having it be a flashback or whatever.
Yeah. No, I love those scenes. It was a very solid way to get us like a little bit more info that we needed, like a little bit more motivation.
Just to know that something was off, but not necessarily what.
And she ends up going from the Skrull hold to C-53, which turns out to be good old Earth, good old Midgard, good old terra firma.
1995 Earth.
They start the 90s references off so fast.
Yeah.
The Blockbuster, the Radio Shack, the movies, like, part of me loved it. Part of me felt like it was a little beating you over the head with it.
Yeah. I wonder if this, and they couldn't have done it in 1995, but if they actually made this movie in 95, would they have had all the jokes about how the computer's loading and all of that kind of stuff? Like, some of that, I was around then. I don't need to be reminded of how annoying computers were and how you had to rent videos at a store if you wanted to watch something at home.
Right. I do absolutely love the musical choices from this movie, which is a lot of... I love it. I love them. It's a lot of very strong female artists. Yeah. It's a lot of great 90s hits. I loved it.
I did not love it. I have a few gripes, and we can get to them when we get to those sections. But I think it definitely wants to get some of that Guardians magic with the pop songs and do it in a different way, but they're trying to kind of hit you in the feels the same way, and I don't know if it's as effective, at least for me. And we
pretty quickly are going to see Nick Fury, which is Samuel L. Jackson, aged down in such a way that was incredible. Yeah. The first time seeing this movie, I was like, wow, Samuel L. Jackson is aging great. And then I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah. No, they definitely have... every movie kind of starting with phase 3, they've tried to do some sort of de-aging. Yeah. And they've kind of gotten progressively better, I think. Yeah. And this definitely is flawless, I think.
No, and especially because Goose specifically, like, there were several different ways that they had Goose. There was actual cats, there were stuffed cats, and there were a lot of CGI cats because Brie Larson is apparently super allergic to cats. So any scenes that she's in, that Goose is in, it's a CGI cat. And there was a breakdown of, like, skeleton to muscles to fur, like, breaking down this cat. And there's, like, one scene where Nick Fury is, like, holding it and, like, schmoozing to it. And it's, like I thought that was a legit scene. Like... I thought that was a legit cat in that scene. It's crazy how good they made these cats look. But apparently the main cat that played Goose is named Reggie. And he's a cute little boy, and I just want to snuggle him.
I like the relationship that Carol and Nick have.
Yeah.
I think it was natural, or it wasn't forced, I guess, where they're sort of unsure of each other at first, and then they go through sort of her lie detector test or whatever at the bar.
I like their relationship a lot. I also like seeing a bit of Coulson as a rookie and seeing that he and Nick have a backstory like that.
Yeah, no, I like that. I do think that his de-aging, and they probably didn't spend as much time on Coulson as they did on Fusion.
He looks like an agent from the Matrix.
Yeah, he's got a little waxy feel to him.
He's a little stiff, I agree with you.
But I was happy to see him, and I think it definitely helps sort of establish him in a kind of a cool way.
Well, part of me realized too that some of his waxiness and some of the reason that I didn't like Coulson so much was because most of the Coulson that we see in this movie is a Skrull pretending to be Coulson, which makes him a little bit stiffer and a little bit less like sure.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
So like
because you don't really see him until the end,
right?
After all of that,
right?
Outside
and
the blockbuster.
we don't really have a way of knowing when the Skrull took Coulson's form in this. Like, I don't know if he's as soon as he stepped out of the car and went inside, if there was a Skrull in there waiting for him, like how quickly it was. So there was a little bit of that. That I was like,
Coulson
in
the trunk of that car, or
no, he's in the. They left him in the theater. Remember in the blockbuster, he's like, I collected all the evidence. Where'd you guys go?
So I think he was there when Nick and him entered then, and then at some point the Skrull stepped in. And whatever. I do think it's a little weird the way that they set up S.H.I.E.L.D. in Iron Man 1 versus how S.H.I.E.L.D. is established firmly in 1995. Watching Iron Man 1, I definitely get the sense that we're supposed to think that S.H.I.E.L.D. is like this new thing.
Right.
And they're like, what? It's strategic home, blah, blah, blah. Like, what do we call it? We need a cool name for it. Like, and that's the whole thing. And I get it. It's kind of a fun thing for Phil Coulson to do in Iron Man, but it kind of makes it a little weird when Fury says Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. right in
away.
this movie. Yeah.
Kind of next overarching bit that it goes into is Carol ends up chasing a Skrull, trying to figure out what they want on Earth, what they're trying to find, and she ends up grabbing
chasing that surfer guy
that turns into the old lady, which and Stan Lee's cameo in this movie.
Yeah, I think it's one of the better ones.
It's one of the best. Yeah. The smile that Brie gives him is like, it just warmed my heart.
And I was happy to see in some of the behind the scenes featurettes that she was on set with Stan at the time, because sometimes they do Stan would film all 4 of his cameos at once or whatever, so not all the actors are there, but I like that she was with him in that scene, and having the nod to Mallrats was cool, because that is sort of looked at as, I think, the first at least on film cameo. He'd done some narration and stuff for some of the cartoons in the 80s,
but so she ends up finally getting the stone that has the memory logs, so that she can figure out where exactly they're trying to go, which is the Project Pegasus connection, which is where Lawson is supposed to be.
And I like how Scree. I like how Kree and Skrull technology is it's compatible. So
compatible for a minute at least, like until it starts like burning or whatever.
Well,
but
she was able to plug it into her thing or whatever. I don't know.
She ends up deciding to go to the U.S. Air Force Base where Project Pegasus was established, because she wants to find out more about Lawson. But in the meantime, she needs to find the bar that she apparently used to frequent. Because
that was one of the main memories that she had, was that
Poncho's
logo
bar
of the bar or whatever.
Which I loved her Googling something in an internet cafe. It wasn't even Google. It was like some ridiculous search.
Yeah.
And that's
Google was even around at that point.
Yeah, and that's the bar where Nick finds her, and they have their little like bonding moment, and Nick very readily decides to help her. Like, Nick wants to figure out who she is, like she obviously is here and not destroying things. Like, she has some power going on, and she just seems to want to use it to stop these things.
And I think at this point, whether he can trust her or not, he wants to stay close to her because she is this powerhouse, and he needs to figure out what to do either way, I guess.
But so they end up going to this Project Pegasus base and finding in the records information about Carol's like real identity, like the fact that she was from Earth, that she's an Air Force pilot, and that she was presumably thought killed, not in action, but in a testing thing with Lawson. And it rocks Carol in like a really serious way. And she does immediately call Jan-Rog and say, what the hell is going on? Like, trying to figure things out.
I like how, and it sets up the beeper nicely, how she's able to take technology and make it space age or whatever,
also
where
like
she can
the scene
communicate.
where she takes his beeper. So that's like the scene.
But she does that with like the payphone and the phone in Project Pegasus, and I think it helps kind of set that up a little bit in a cool way.
And we also have found out during the autopsy scene just before this that Nick Fury's boss has been his form has been assumed by Talos.
Yeah.
And so Talos, in this guy's form, which is Ben Mendelsohn's actual face.
Yeah. Well, conveniently, he finds someone who has the same sounding voice as him too, because
but when he's green, he's got his Australian accent.
I guess, but they sound. I mean, to me, they sound the same.
They do sound very similar
because it's him talking. But
but no, when he touches the guy on the autopsy table, he goes into his Australian accent, which is his normal accent.
Yeah. Fine.
But so they end up escaping from him again and escaping out of Project Pegasus base and by taking a crazy, it looks like a Quinjet. It's very close to a Quinjet.
And this is where they meet Goose.
And then, yes, they meet Goose. Nick Fury being a freaking cat freak is amazing.
Well, I think Samuel L. Jackson is like that in real life.
Oh my God.
He was like cuddling and cradling the cat in
every moment
some
of him
just
like
stuff.
Baby talking the cat. I was in hysterics. And they take Goose along, not really on purpose, but
I think he stows away or whatever.
Yeah. They end up heading to Louisiana to find the last person that saw Carol alive, which is Maria,
her best bud.
Which their reunion was super sweet. I thought, even though Carol was like so confused and didn't really know what was going on, I thought that the reunion with her daughter and like this mild memories that started coming back was like they did it really well. And I immediately felt a super connection between Maria and Carol, which I think is just because Bree and, oh God, I can't remember her name.
Lashana Lynch they've got really good chemistry. Yeah. And it just immediately felt super believable. Well, and I think it was important to have a representation of strong female friendship too, where they wanted to not have her supporting character be all men. But so we very quickly and again, it feels like we're rocketing through this movie, but this movie literally rocketed through itself. Like these plot beats are very quickly one into the other, and very quickly just it's all very fast. It all just has pacing problems. While they're in Maria's house, that's when Talos shows up and starts to make his plea about, I'm not a bad guy. I just want to save my people, which didn't believe him at first. Totally didn't believe him. But then he also brings the black box with him for Carol to kind of jog her memories a little bit more. And she realizes so the black box records the cockpit talking, it records the flight patterns, it records that kind of stuff. And it records HD video too, and edited sequences of but after they crash, all of the memories that she has of Yon-Rog and shooting the engine and stuff, that's just her, I guess, filling in that gap. Yeah, well, I think that hearing the audio and all of that must just jog it all back. Yeah. Which so she shoots the engine and just takes freaking full Tesseract power straight to the face. Well, we don't know it's a Tesseract. We don't know it yet, but yeah. Yeah, no, and that is a cool nod to how she actually in the comics got her powers too. Right. It does look very similar to the energy patterns that are in the last movie we watched, First Avenger, when they're shooting those guns. Yeah. It does look... it's the same energy, essentially, I guess. Right. But it looks much more noticeably similar, it's a different form because it doesn't vaporize her. She absorbs it or whatever. She's too strong. Yeah. She's like, this is mine now. Yeah. I need this. And so then it turns out that she gets taken back to Hala after that point, and they transfuse Yon-Rog's blood into her and start brainwashing her and making her believe that she's a Kree. So they put the chip in her neck and... Yes, because they have no idea, I guess, what these powers of hers will be yet, or how capable she'll be. Well, they want to monitor her and keep her on their side. I know that you maybe don't love Talos so much, but the points... No, it's not that I don't love him. I think Ben Mendelsohn does a good job of doing what they want him to do. The points I just think that the shift, I agree. It was... I didn't believe him. I didn't super believe him. But the points when he's when they're trying to figure out the coordinates and they're like, yeah, it's in orbit, dumbass. And he's like, you're my science guy. I like that a little, but I just think in contrast to how he is in the first half of the movie, I think they could have downplayed him in those scenes where he's capturing her and he's not being as maniacal with her or whatever. But I guess, to be fair, he doesn't know that she
would end up helping.
Yeah, and is there kind of not against her will, but essentially she is against her will, where she's kind of
they I
brainwashed.
guess would just assume that she's another Kree and just kind of run with it. So
fine, I love Talos.
I love this man. I love him so much. But so they find out that Mar-Vell has a secret laboratory orbiting Earth that has the source of this engine's power, which turns out to be the Tesseract.
Yeah.
And they modify the Quinjet looking thing to be able to get up to this.
Which at the time, when watching it the first time, it definitely kind of threw me for a loop when I was in the theater, because I was like trying to remember where the Tesseract was at this point, and I was like, how does this work? But I guess it's in S.H.I.E.L.D.'s custody, and Project Pegasus is a government thing, whatever. So it does, obviously it works, but it seemed a little off at first for me.
Yeah, it's a little wonky, because if you even think about in Endgame in the 70s is when they went to that base. It's in
Camp Lehigh.
Yeah, it's in Safe, but I guess that she could have requisitioned it or wanted to try something with it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But so they end up finding this cloaked laboratory, and Carol just can uncloak it at the drop of a hat just by tapping something on her arm, which I thought was
her magic little
communicator thing. They find this laboratory, and it turns out that Talos was telling the truth, and his family is there, and that's when I actually started to believe him.
Well, yeah.
I still thought that there might be a possibility that he could turn around and be like, yeah, thanks for helping me find my fam, bye, and just shoot him or something. But Star Force shows up pretty quickly and pretty quickly establish themselves as the bad guys right after this beautiful reunion moment. So I was like,
and we knew, seeing the recovered memory from when she hears the black box, seeing Jan-Rog come out of the mist or the smoke or whatever, you kind of know where he stands.
It could have been a double twist. It could have been a twist within a twist. M. Night Shyamalan.
Yeah. Oh, please give him a Marvel movie. But yeah, I liked the sort of the showdown with her against her old team or whatever.
Well, but I like first when she breaks free of the Supreme Intelligence.
Yeah, well, I more meant they have a little conversation or whatever, and I liked that. And I liked her second conversation with the Supreme Intelligence. It annoyed me to no end, the Nirvana song.
What?
Do you know when that song came out?
Oh, is it late?
No, it's 1991.
Okay.
Do they have Nirvana on Hala? How would she know that song? When did she hear that song?
So when she
if she crash landed into a Sam Goody instead of a Blockbuster and was grabbing some CDs, and they showed her grabbing a Nirvana CD, then I wouldn't have been so annoyed. I just think that she left Earth in 1989.
1989. Okay.
Yes. Come As You Are came out in 1991 or 1990. I'm pretty sure it's 1991, and that just took me right out of it, because I'm kind of a stickler for, especially where we're looking at
song.
I'm sorry for ruining it for you, but especially looking at and they're so 1995, here we are, and I just think it needed to be a song from the 80s.
Yeah.
Because it had to be a song that she was pulling from her past life. Yeah. For me.
That makes sense.
And I think having it even be a song from 95 wouldn't have been as bad, because maybe she heard it, and maybe she heard Come As You Are on the motorcycle when she's going, but still it just seemed like there
could have been a little well, I mean, I'm not going to try and fully defend it, but I guess she could have had the daughter pulls out all kinds of stuff.
Well, and I don't want that either, because that's way too on the nose.
No, I know.
I just think that they were looking at what song kind of fits the theme and sounds cool, and you get Annette Bening doing her weird dance, and I like that. But
I love it.
At the time in the theater, it took me right out, because I was listening to Nirvana in the early 90s and knew that wasn't from the correct time, I guess.
Yeah, but I understand.
Gripe over for now.
Now I'm sad. Now the whole movie's ruined. I don't like Carol anymore. But so she ends up meeting with the Supreme Intelligence again, and I love the scene with Supreme Intelligence and her finding her inner strength, and the Supreme Intelligence saying, "You're just human," and it's like, yeah, I am, and I'm still gonna beat you up. Well,
and it's her realizing who she is and she has the power and what she needs to do to kind of take it back.
The montage with like each, like her as a young girl standing up, her as in boot camp, like I just loved that very much. I think it's a way to sort of tie in all of the disjointed memories and everything, and it's kind of her realizing at that moment what she needs to do, and that's kind of what the theme of a lot of these movies are, where you're only human, but you just stand up and try again. Well, and it's very similar to Steve Rogers. Like, he's still just a human. Yeah. And he's still just doing what he can.
He doesn't back down. He won't give up.
Right.
And
he's still going to keep trying to do what he can do until, like, he breaks, basically.
And I think that's kind of also what they're setting up by having this movie come out, or have it take place in 95 and be sort of this precursor to everything else. Is now Cap is sort of the father and she's sort of the mother, the female version of that or whatever. And not to get too gendery, but I like sort of the symmetry of that or whatever, where they're the two captains and they're essentially the two strongest characters.
Yep, the strongest Avenger.
Well, and I know Thor's
she can fight
power,
Thor for that
Thor
power.
And Hulk and all that, but more their willpower and their determination and all of that. I think that they are the pillars of this Marvel Cinematic Universe going forward now.
She and Steve have a lot of similarities, and like they're not going to be told no. They're going to find a way to do it anyways. They're going to prove people wrong, and I do love that. I think they did a really good job with that.
Well, that's where I'm kind of sad that at least they get a little scene at the beginning of Endgame, but they're probably not going to have any other interactions, which is kind of...
That's a bummer.
Making me sad.
Now I'm sad. You keep ruining things for me.
Well, we're getting to some of the more exciting parts of the movie here.
We are. We're getting to... So she rips the thing off of her neck and is suddenly able to access her entire powers, which instead of just her hands glowing, it's her whole body. It's her whole deal.
She's glowing.
Which I love during the part of her fighting the Star Force and making her way through this ship that she's like blowing herself back and figuring it out as she goes. It's
fun. It's a good way for her to kind of work out the kinks before she's blowing up Ronan's ship and all of that.
And I do like the song choice again that was used there, the No Doubt. But someone made a video on the YouTubes where they overlaid the song that she sings in Scott Pilgrim over that fight scene, or whatever. And it's great.
Really?
It's so good. It fits the scene really, really well too.
I just thought it was a little on the nose, and I get it, but I was done with the 90s music, I think, by the time of the Supreme Intelligence scene or whatever.
Well, you had just been taken out of it, so you were struggling. But so she ends up fighting all of Star Force, and Minerva ends up going and trying to chase down Maria and Nick.
Yeah, they escape with the Tesseract.
Yes, we're not even talking about Goose as being a little flirkin' dude.
Oh, yeah.
His tentacles and just swallowing the Tesseract, which was... hilarious. Oh my gosh. Nick like just immediately dropping him
I think it was cool now. It was a little weird, but that's something that was introduced earlier in the Carol as Captain Marvel comics from a few years ago. So I think it was a cool way to sort of work that in where he's absorbing the Tesseract. Yeah. And then it kind of takes it off the board, so you don't have to worry about who's going to get it and all of that.
But the scene of Minerva chasing after this other ship totally gave me Star Wars vibes. Yeah, like it was.
And it does the sort of going through the mountains and stuff seemed like a little bit like Jakku or. Even the crate at the end of Last Jedi.
Yep, a little bit of pod racing vibes too.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But yeah, so she ends up pretty much wiping the floor with literally all of Star Force. But Yon-Rogg gets away and heads down to Earth, and she decides to follow him. But this is also the time when he's called in Ronan for backup, saying that Earth has been infested with Skrull, and Ronan's like, "Yeah, I love killing."
And they subtly do a good job of setting up the accusers. There's a few lines early on that that's kind of what they do, is they go in and they wipe out on Torfa. That's what they did.
And like Ronan was like, they're going to C-53, like, let me go. I'll go decimate it. And Yanrog is like, hang on.
Ronan in this is a little, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but
he doesn't have the black on his eyes. He's not like fully
he hasn't
freaked the fuck out yet.
He's not in his crazy worship, whatever.
I mean, he's definitely going insane.
Yes. But I think just having him in this movie is a cool way to kind of connect things. But I feel like, again, he doesn't really get utilized in a big, meaningful way.
You know, I honestly, first time seeing this movie, I was like, that's not Lee Pace. I didn't believe that it was Lee Pace.
Oh, really?
Just something about him seems so off.
Well, and I knew, because they had announced going into it that he was coming back. So I knew, and I was thinking that it was going to be, maybe I just was thinking that he was going to have a bigger role.
Yeah.
And he's in 2 holograms in that one scene. That's it. Yeah. But I don't know. I think it'll be interesting if they use him again and they kind of set it up at the end. But I'd like to see him get a little bit more to do, because even in Guardians, doesn't really do anything.
Right.
And that movie he doesn't really fit in sort of the style of the movie. The villain in Guardians 2 is a better match for the comedic stylings of those movies or whatever.
But so Ronan pops out of nowhere and decides to send a shit ton of ballistic missiles at Earth, and Carol.
So do you think that Ronan was just waiting there the whole time? Because whole thing about the engine that they're trying to get the technology for is that it lets them travel.
But they are...
When Star Force goes to Earth, it takes them a day or two to get there.
Well, they say that they ask where C-53 is, and they say that it's 30-something hours to the next jump point. So we don't know exactly where Ronan is in the universe.
Maybe Star Force was further away.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we don't know exactly where Ronan was in the universe, if he was just kind of ready to, like, if he was nearer to a jump point, if he was, like, if his ship just had bigger capabilities because it was so much bigger, sort of thing. I mean, they're working on light speed travel in this, which isn't a thing. There still seems to be, like, the jump points.
Sure, yeah.
Sort of
well, thing. And it seemed like he got there
very
really quickly.
Yes.
Versus them having to take days to get to Carol.
But so he seems hell-bent on just flat out destroying Earth, which it seems like that's what they do, is they just destroy the planet. Yeah. And Carol she says, fuck no. And she just turns, she starts using the missiles to attack each other. I love when she just gets to have fun and show her powers. It seems like the whole movie has just been building to her being this badass. Yeah. And it's awesome.
No, I think her kind of being unleashed and able to use the full extent of her powers is where I start to get excited and interested in her character and kind of where she may go in the future.
Well, and the way that she destroyed one of Ronan's ships is very similar to the way that she decimates Thanos' ship later in Endgame. It's just, and it's so cool to just see that again. She's just like, yeah, I don't care. I'm gonna take it all down. You're gonna be this way.
I did not love Ronan's last line. I thought that was a little hammy.
Oh, to come back for the woman?
Yeah. And then she destroyed the other ship in a half a second. Why doesn't she just destroy the other ship? She knows that they're going to annihilate everything.
Carol doesn't seem like she wants to kill. I think she'll do it if she has to.
I know, but she knows how they operate, and she may have scared them away from Earth, but they're just going to go do that to another planet.
I feel like she thinks I'll go get the Skrulls a new home and then I'll just go deal with them later.
Yeah. Well, that's where it ends, is she's going to
go find him.
Yeah, and to end this whole war, basically. Yeah.
But I love it comes down to Earth, and she has the showdown with Yanrog. The fight that wasn't really a fight. Yes. Which I love. Again, it's more of the patronizing,
he's trying to put her down or keep her.
And she just knocks him the fuck out.
Yeah, she, much like First Avenger, there's another nod, I thought, to Raiders of the Lost Ark with that blast, just because that's the iconic moment
the
in...
Whip and stuff.
The guy's got the sword and he's doing the fancy sword work, and Harrison Ford pulls out his gun and shoots him.
It's one of my favorites.
And the reason that he did that was because he had dysentery and didn't want to do a big battle.
Yes.
So do you think that Brie Larson also
had dysentery? Probably. I mean, I think that's the most logical conclusion.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense.
I don't want to fight you right now, Jude. I've got dysentery.
No, I think it's
Do you know how hard it is to get this suit off?
Yeah. They had to install a butt flap in this suit.
But so, yeah, she decides to send Yonrog back to Hala because I think the, like, failure that he's going to go back there with and have to confront with the Supreme Intelligence is, like, even worse than anything she could do to him.
Yeah, well, and they want him for the sequel.
Well, yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good way for her to kind of send her message and shame him.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely send him back.
She could kill him, but he's not going to learn his lesson, so...
No.
Not that I want him to learn his lesson, I just want him to die.
Oh.
He's a mean boy.
He is a mean boy. He's a bad boy. I don't like... I love
naughty,
Jude Law,
he's a
but I
naughty
don't
boy.
like this. He's a naughty boy. he's a woot boy.
Woot boy.
A woot boy. But so, yeah, and then from there, the movie kind of wraps up with Carol deciding that she's going to help the Skrulls find a new home. She's going to... she's got bigger fish to fry than just staying on Earth and wants to go across the universe now with her newfound powers and try and right some other wrongs, probably go take on Ronan and stuff. Well, that's when she gives Nick back his pager.
Yeah. No, I like that. And it definitely, obviously, it lines up nicely with him having that in Infinity War.
How did you feel about Nick losing his eye because of a goose?
I don't know. I feel like the movie was the whole time was setting it up like, is this the time that is this the reason that he loses his eye? And I think the line that he says in Winter Soldier where
he trusted a friend or something.
And I mean, he kind of, and Nick saying that I could take as him just like trying to make his point in Winter Soldier, and maybe that isn't, obviously that's not what happened, but he kind of trusted Goose, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's interesting way to do it, and it kind of explains why all the scars are all wonky because he got the poison from the scratch or whatever. But yeah, I think if the movie hadn't the whole time been like... ploying you into... Yeah. Especially with the autopsy scene where he's like, how's your eye? And he's just like, it's fine. Yeah. Like, I was like, oh, we're going to see Nick lose his eye in this, but I hate you for this. Yeah. And I think that I would have been fine with him at the end of the movie doing the jokes about the eye and then his eye being still there. Yeah.
I'm a little like, I wanted it to be something a little bit more dramatic. Yeah. I also don't hate the goose thing. Like there's some part about it that...
No, I think the moment is kind of, it's an interesting way to do it because this whole time they're getting along great. But that is, if you're a cat person, you have a very limited amount of time to love on them. And if you kind of cross a certain threshold, sometimes they're gonna let you know it. So I do, from in that aspect, I like that. But I think the way the movie sort of laid it all out was a little over the top.
Yeah, but then we see the last scene in Nick's office with him figuring out the Protector Initiative, but then he sees Carol's call sign as Avenger, and it turns into the Avenger Initiative, and I thought that was a nice way to...
Yeah, and it fits because her sort of the overarching theme with her character in this movie is she's going to become that character where she is going to protect but also avenge the people that have been wronged.
Not prevenge.
Yes.
No prevenging.
No prevenging.
What did you think about the post-credit scenes?
I thought the scene with the Avengers was cool, and especially...
Rest in peace, Chris Evans' beard.
Yes, we will get into the deep dive on the beard at a later date, but I think seeing that scene, especially in anticipation of Endgame, was cool, and showing you how Carol meets the Avengers, and I liked that as just sort of a chunk of, it's essentially could have been the beginning of Endgame, but they chose to show you that in this movie. But
part of it that kind of like jarred me a little is this movie doesn't end in the current time. It ends still in the 90s. Yeah. And then for the first post-credit scene to be like a jump to 2018 felt a little jarring.
Yeah, I think they didn't want the audience to miss it. That's why they had the mid-credits instead of the post-credits. Yep. They're assuming that you have seen Infinity War, which most people, I think, would have at that point.
Yes.
But yeah, I think it would have fit better as a end scene, but then the goose scene wouldn't really have worked as the mid credits where he's puking up the Tesseract, because now they seem to have transitioned to the mid credits being sort of the main tease,
right?
And then the post final scene is being just sort of like a joke extra tag kind of thing or whatever. So yeah, it was a little jarring, but I think showing you the pager, you are kind of signaled that it is something to do on Earth post the movie, obviously, and then seeing our Avengers,
right?
You know that it's after Infinity War.
And in terms of like, this movie has a bunch of deleted scenes. It has 6 of them, some of which are really just like fillery, just like extra stuff with Talos and extra little like establishing things. But there are 2 that I think maybe might have helped the pacing of this movie a lot more and maybe given us a better kind of intro to her and made it feel less disjointed. Which there's one about the Star Force recruits where Jude Law, Yon-Rogg, is giving a much better kind of overview of Hala, the Supreme Intelligence.
Yeah.
Carol comes and like talks about her powers and like why she's got the thing on her neck and kind of the whole thing.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't clear, I don't think, until the end that chip is what it's like a restraining bolt or whatever at that point.
And it just seemed like it might have like helped, and just the pacing of that whole scene just felt a lot better than their little back and forth on the train.
Yeah.
I don't like where they were going to insert it into the movie just based on the editing of that scene.
Well, it ends with her saying, "You want to fight?"
Right.
Which would be the lead into.
I think if it had replaced the train scene, it would have been a lot better, but I don't know. And then there was a little scene about the whole Star Force heading to Torfa, which kind of could have been a better.
Yeah, it sets up the characters a little bit
more of her interactions with Minerva and why Minerva hates her so much. Like, it felt more natural than the other really quick intro we had to Star Force.
Yeah, Minerva definitely gets sort of short shrift, I think, in this movie.
Yeah,
where,
all of them do.
Yeah, she could have been, I think, a better foil for Carol, and highlighting that rivalry a little bit more might have helped.
But instead it's just like very catty, like I don't know. But the rest of them, there's one more that they expanded the no smile scene with the biker.
Yeah, and we didn't even really touch on that, but what did you think of that whole sequence, even as it is in the movie?
As it is in the movie, I think it's fine for what it is. It's legitimately like a thing I encounter daily. Really? People tell it, specifically men telling me to smile or saying, "Why aren't you smiling?" So it was very on the nose true.
And it is going back to sort of, we were talking about the backlash before, talking about when the picture, I think it was Entertainment Weekly, when her costume and everything was revealed and she was on the cover, and the first comments were, why isn't she smiling? Why is she so serious? So it's interesting. And I think seeing the movie initially, I kind of thought maybe that was added to like respond to those comments, but then I read or saw something somewhere where Brie Larson said that was always in the movie, and that's just how that is. So it's kind of crazy that's all
the time, if not daily, like multiple times a day. It's crazy, and they think it's all cute and they think it's flirty, but it's just very like, you don't have to smile for anybody.
Well, and I think it goes back to the Yon-Rogg relationship where he's trying to, it's a subtle control thing where I'm the man and I'm like better than you essentially, and why aren't you smiling around? Like, I want you to smile, so it's a subservient. It makes me feel comfortable, so you should do that exactly. And that's bullshit.
The deleted scene, I wouldn't have been upset to see her like take that guy down and kind of make him like I loved that, but I also don't think the movie necessarily needed it. I think what we got was also very good.
Yeah, it may have been too much where she's like retaliating to that, which also is probably not the best reaction.
Yeah. And then the very last scene that I wanted to talk about was Yon-Rogg's version of the Supreme Intelligence being himself. Yeah. Which was one of the most awkward scenes I think I've ever watched. There was a lot of sexual tension there. Yeah. And I was like,
well, if he is in love with himself, then that makes sense.
It was a lot.
Well, and I think I'm glad that that's not in the movie, but it kind of answers that question that they set up in the film. Who do you see when?
Right.
And it's clear that he's
self-absorbed.
Yes, thank you.
In the Star Force recruit scene, they're like joking about how, and she's like, "What do you see yourself?" And he's just like, he just looks away, and it's like, yeah, like.
Well, and there is an interesting. I know I'm a comic book boy, but there's an interesting nod in that you notice how his hair is white.
Yes.
That is, and the costume is the look of the original Captain Marvel.
Oh, is it?
From the 60s. That was, he had white hair and it was wearing a version of that uniform or whatever. So I thought it was a cool way to sort of nod back to what the original version looked like.
Yeah. Well, on your final score for this movie, out of 6 Avengers, what would you give it?
I'm leaning 3.5 Avengers.
3.5 Avengers. I was sitting at a solid 3.2 Avengers.
Wow.
I came out of this movie loving Carol, the character, but I don't love this movie.
Yeah. Well, and I watched it 2 times this week in preparation. The first time I watched it, I didn't like it at all. Yeah. The second time, for some reason, it didn't. There were more things that bugged me that didn't bug me, and I don't know if I just accepted it or what. But I did enjoy it overall. Well,
and one of these things that I still just really think is that we didn't need this movie before Endgame. Yeah. And one of my friends that I watched this movie with had seen Endgame but hadn't seen this. And she was like, yeah, it's watching Endgame. I was like, holy shit, who's Carol? Like, I want to find out more about her. And then seeing this movie, she was like, oh.
Yeah. Would you want this movie before Infinity War or when? Like,
no, I think this movie could have come after Endgame.
But what if it?
But not this movie specifically.
Well, yeah. I think part of it too. If this was a better movie, it wouldn't have bugged you.
But it's just. Like, Black Panther managed to be introduced cold in Civil War and ended up with a great movie after that was still exploring an origin. Yeah. So I don't think it was completely undoable.
Well, and I think it all comes back to them wanting to weave her further back. Right. Where no matter when the movie came out, it was going to feel off just because from Infinity War into Endgame, we're kind of on this trajectory, and Captain Marvel kind of takes you out of that. Right. And it's connected loosely, but it's still really removed because it takes place before everything else but Captain America: First Avenger.
What do you think Carol's future in the MCU is going to be?
So I think the movie does some setting up for a sequel, obviously.
Endgame sets up a lot of options for her.
Yes, but my main question really is, do you think Captain Marvel 2 is going to stay in the 90s, or is it going to jump beyond everything else? Because the Kree are still around in 2014 for Guardians, but she obviously is leaving in 95 to go deal with them. Right. So there's going to be some shift in something. And
I feel like going back again post Endgame is going to feel wrong. Mm-hmm. I could definitely see Yon-Rogg hasn't been dealt with. Ronan's been dealt with. Maybe she just didn't get her chance to deal with him and he got taken in by Thanos sort of thing. Yeah. So I still think that there's plenty of Kree for her to deal with and figure herself out or to have something to do in 2023 in the movies. Yeah. So I think that there's but I think if they go back to 90s or early 2000s, it's just going to feel really weird and disjointed.
It'll be interesting, I guess, to see kind of because they could go either direction, I think. Right. Personally, I think you're right. I want to keep going ahead. I don't want to keep going back. And I want her to be worked back into the Marvel Universe more. I've got a good idea of what she's like out in space on her own. Right. And I know they've said they speculated that Annihilation is going to be one of the overarching themes of the movies going forward, and that's basically a giant cosmic wave of insects that destroys everything in its path. Oh dear. So I think she would obviously be a good character to set up in sort of an overarching Marvel universe, and she's sort of leading an Avengers team dealing with that. And I think they're going to deal with the Kree Skrull War in some way. That's a big storyline in the Avengers, where they're dealing with the similar way that Carol's dealing with it on her own. The Avengers kind of get brought in to mediate between these two warring races. But so I think they're going to deal with that in some way, and whether it's in the past or in the future present, we'll see.
Days of Future Past.
Yes. The only other thing that's sort of up in the air that they set up that I think is, and we didn't really touch on her, but Maria's daughter, Monica, the reason she's in the movie mainly is to be that person who's being inspired by Carol and seeing this strong female do all of these amazing things. And there's a reason that she gets the last shot watching the ship as it flies up at the end.
Well, she's
watching Carol leave with the Skrulls.
She's in at least her 30s now in the current timeline.
Yeah, so Monica Rambeau is introduced in the comics in the 80s as Captain Marvel.
Okay.
So at that point, Carol is not Captain Marvel. She's Miss Marvel in the comics, or she's binary, I think, at that point. And the only other Captain Marvel has been Marvel, who has died.
Yep.
He dies in the early 80s, and Monica Rambeau is introduced as a character separate from... I don't think she has any connection to Carol at all. And she is introduced with light powers, and she can fly really fast and has light beams and whatever. So she is actually the second Captain Marvel. But there's a reason that Maria is the mother. If they were just wanting to do a nod to Monica Rambeau, then the friend Maria would be Monica, I think.
Yep.
There's a reason that Monica is the child, because they're going to, as we get into the present, she is going to be introduced in some capacity as a superhero. Mm-hmm. So later on in her history in the comics, Monica becomes other superheroes. She takes other names. The main one is Photon, alludes to her light powers or whatever. So my guess is that she is going to come in either in Captain Marvel 2 or one of these other Avengery movies as a way to tie Carol back in and be just another character in the universe.
Well, we'll have to come back when Captain Marvel 2 comes out and see.
Yes, well, that's my hot take prediction. We'll see if that happens in the next couple of years.
Your speculation station?
Yes.
Toot toot. So, the next movie up on our watch is Iron Man.
Yeah.
You excited?
I am.
For our...
Going back to the beginning.
Our watch of the beginning of the Marvel Universe. So,
yes. Yeah.
So, come join us again on Marvel Lane when we talk about Iron Man. Pew pew. Pew pew.
I'm Tyler.
Courtney. About Sector 16 for a hot second, like the dank sewer dungeon that Sector 16 was.
Well, it's a secret. It's a secret lab. He's got to be.
It's not really. It's got a door right there. It was just kind of like
that
really
says like "Do not enter" or whatever.
The hanging chains and the dripping water. Yeah.